Welcome to today's presentation. The presentation is going to take essentially two parts, one here in the slides and then browsing the website and then a demonstration. My name is Robert Smith. I'm a data scientist at the CLAAUDIA team here at Aalborg University. We help out with research data related questions that researchers have. We also offer access to multiple platforms where people can execute high performance computing tasks, or just work cloud-based if they choose to. Today's presentation is about primarily the Whisper application, but because the Whisper application offers the opportunity to transcribe data that could be sensitive, a big part of today's presentation is also going to be about being able to work with sensitive data on the UCloud platform. For those of you who are first joining a presentation or at least a demo of the UCloud platform, I'm going to keep today's introduction very short so that I can focus on the demonstration, but there's another demonstration on the website where you can get a full introduction as to how everything fits together and what other compute options Dyke offers. Please always remember to reference your use of UCloud. And you can see there's a link in the middle of the slides. Everyone who's a part of today will get a copy of these slides, and all these links should be accessible to you. A big thank you to everyone who helped with the application, and to Pelle Rosenberg, who developed the application and has continued to develop the application to the point where it is today. This application is for the UCloud platform, so that's what today's presentation is also going to focus on. I'll present mostly the changes from the last presentation in terms of the features in the application. I'll run through generally what the application does. It is a transcription application which takes audio with voices and converts it into text. You can do this with a single file, or you can do it with multiple files that are sitting in a folder. And there's an automatic export of 8 different formats. A new format included is Microsoft Word, as that was requested by several researchers. You need to choose the language of the output, because whatever you choose as a language will be all of the text in the output. If you want to select the model size, the default is the large model, which we find to be the most accurate. And then there's the possibility, a new possibility now, of opening a Jupyter Notebook if you want to interact with the application. You can also enter an interactive Ubuntu terminal, which gives you just terminal access instead of a Jupyter Notebook access. The final point is that you can now automatically get access to a zip archive. That zip archive has the option of being AES encrypted, where you can provide a passcode. And we'll do a demonstration of a few different possible workflows that you might have. In progress at the moment is automatic speaker recognition. When that comes out, just a pre-warning, you are definitely going to need to post-process all of your data just to check that everything's correct. We recommend that always with your transcription data anyway, even with this basic Whisper transcription version. Some key points to note: this is the second release, version 1.1. There's a link in these slides for you to please give us your feedback. There's a Microsoft form you can fill out. You can choose anonymous or not. At the bottom of this slide on the left is a link to the index of applications on UCloud. There's 78 applications you can use on UCloud. So if you want to post-process your data, you don't have to download it to do it. All right. A big part of today, I promised, would be about personal data, or at least sensitive data of different classifications. I'm going to use the word sensitive in its layman's term today, because I don't want to get too much into the specifics about what each person's data classification is. But let's first have a look at where you can get the information you need if you are a researcher, you want to work with Whisper, and you have some data that you think is sensitive. First step is to open researcher.aau.dk. And this is the new site that's been developed as a collective landing point for researchers at AAU. And you can navigate to Guides, Research Data and Software, and then Software for Research. And in the Software for Research location, we have a link to our Whisper application under Selected Tools and Applications. This is the only way you can get to the Whisper application at the moment. You can browse into that, and you can find information about the Whisper application here, as well as what to do what you might need if you are working with sensitive data. This is the first way to get to the procedure for working with projects in UCloud, which covers what you will need to do if you are working with this sensitive data. The outcome of the two processes you need to go through before you start working on UCloud is that you will receive a project reference number from WorkZone from grants and contracts, and you will receive a Dike Interactive HPC project number from CLAAUDIA. If we have a look at that procedure just by clicking this link, you'll see it takes you to a page that explains everything that you need to do. It also explains the two contexts in which projects are most likely to be needed. Anyone working with sensitive data, generically sensitive data, needs to have a project. So data classifications 2 or 3. You cannot work in my workspace on UCloud if you have data in either of these classifications. There's a link here in this process that takes you to the data classification scheme, so you can go in there and have a look at it to try and figure out what your data is. If you have trouble with that, you're welcome to contact us at CLAAUDIA, and we'll help you try and work through your data classification. There are a number of other links here that you should be aware of. The Danish Code of Conduct for Research Integrity, AAU's policies on research data management, AAU's policies on GDPR. Those are dependent on what your role is at AAU. And then AAU's data management recommendations. And those policies are part of what has informed this agreed process that we have come to with the Department of Grants and Contracts. Step 1, identify your data classification. If you're a researcher, you need to submit an application form to the Department of Grants and Contracts to register the use of sensitive data or personal data. And if you click this link, it'll take you across to the Department of Grants and Contracts, and you'll be able to submit either your data controller or data processor application here. At point 4, we have an application for projects on UCloud, and this will take you directly to the application for resources for this UCloud project that I've been talking about. And this is just a Microsoft form. The generic applications on UCloud are all those applications that do not have AAU as the provider. Virtual machines are not permitted for the use of sensitive data. Virtual machines are also the only place where you can get a GPU. So at the moment, you can't use the Whisper application with a GPU with sensitive data. So what I recommend today, and what you'll see me go through in the examples, will be the use of a CPU machine, a very large CPU machine, that is able to process your audio data on the application environment inside a project on UCloud. There are 2 other places that I think you should be aware of on researcher.aau.dk that will help you find this in future. Inside of guides, there's a section called high performance computing, and UCloud is a type of high performance computing. The terms and conditions is the second place where you can find a link to our process. So if you come down in our terms and conditions for HPC use, under confidentiality and sensitivity of data, there's a link here to Dike Interactive project with sensitive data, and that will take you to that same procedure. I'm not going to go back through that way, but I'm going to come back up here to researcher and guides, and in high performance computing again. So instead of going to the terms and conditions, I'm now going to go to the access point, and then we have a quick link to apply for a project. That takes us to this application form, and I'm just going to show you quickly how to fill the application form out. I'm just going to enter my details here. Robert Smith. You can find my email address on the website, so I'm not going to be too worried about putting that in. I'm at the IT services department, and we are doing a demo for Whisper presentation, or Whisper transcription, let's say, on UCloud. And it's going to be a new project. And in this next section under motivation, it should really be at least almost an abstract level of information, so we understand exactly why we need to give you access to these resources. I'm just going to put in a very brief one to make this presentation shorter. We'll run from today until tomorrow, and we'll go next. This question is about who will the project be primarily for. So in my case, it's for an administrative employee that this project is being set up. The standard compute resources is the next section. So we do UCloud's standard application product first, and then if you want the more complicated AAU GPU resources, you can say, yes, I want GPU resources next. But we're not going to do that today because you can't run the Whisper application with sensitive data on a virtual machine anyway. So let's have a look at how you need to calculate what you need. If you just run the straight base Whisper application to transcribe your files, it runs for as long as it takes to transcribe your files. And you can work on a rough estimate, a conservative estimate of 1-to-1. So if you say, I have a total of 6.5 hours of recorded material, then you can work on roughly 6.5 hours of transcribing time. The price of a 16-core virtual machine is £1.36 per hour. So if I had to transcribe 6.5 hours of audio material, it should only cost me about 9 crowns. I just recommend rounding up whatever value you need up to the nearest 50 Danish crowns. Feel free to allocate what you need. I'm just going to put in the value of the project that I set up last night, which was 100 crowns. And let's say I want 3 or 5, let's say 3 gigabytes of space. I'm only using SDU standard compute resources. That's all I need to fill in if I'm only going to be doing transcription or only using the app environment in a limited capacity on UCloud. Let's go next. I don't need any licenses or public IPs. And then I need to enter the project members. I am the only project member for today, but if you have more project members, you would need to enter their information here. Do I wish to add another project member? No. Next. Do I have any external collaborators? I do not. And it's very important to note here that this form is not sufficient for you to register external collaborators. You need to report to us if you have had external collaborators authorized in advance to work on data on UCloud. We will not be providing authorization for external collaborators. That gets done by the Department of Grants and Contracts and needs to be pre-authorized by an institute leader or whoever your line manager might be. I think it heads up to the institute leader in each institute. I stand to be corrected. Maybe someone who knows can comment in the chat. And I'm going to submit that. When that is approved, you'll get an email response like the one you see on the screen where your DIKE project number is noted in the project number section. Additional comments will appear here if the reviewer provides any. As it says, it will be blank if there aren't any. And then the information about your application comes underneath. You've submitted your application, you've got your work zone number, and you now have your DIKE project number. Then you can find the UCloud platform. And you can either do that by punching the address in, or you can just search for UCloud. Maybe I should spell that correctly on Google. And the UCloud Sudan's link is the first one that pops up. You can click on UCloud. I'm just going to log out so you can see the login process. You should land on a WAIF login portal such as this one. You can click here. If you already logged into your WAIF or profile on your browser, you click that and you should just be taken almost directly straight in by clicking on the correct university. You might have to search for Aalborg University in that list. You land on My Workspace. You may not put sensitive data as a researcher into My Workspace. From UCloud's landing page, in this drop-down box at the top, you can see there's a workspace selection tab or drop-down at the top. There's a section in there called Manage Projects. And from this view inside My Workspace, you can click New Project Application. It's very important here that the title you give in the UCloud space is the same as the one that you give in your application. So if we have a look at the title that I provided in the application, it was Demo for Transcription on Whisper Transcription on UCloud. Just copy that and paste that in. Select the grant giver. This is a little bit misleading. There are only resources for AAU users in Type 1. Type 3 is a large memory HPC facility that is not accessible to AAU users in the standard local application or grant applications that can be done through the platform. You only use Type 1. You only need Type 1 if you want to do transcription. we asked in our application for 3 gigabytes of Dyke Interactive SDU. U1 CIFS is the basic storage type on UCloud. So that is the standard UCloud storage facility. Underneath that comes a compute section. And in here, you need to find the compute that is for SDU. In brackets, in all of these ones that you see at the top here are AAU. And that's because these are the Aalborg University provided virtual machine resources. You can't use those for Whisper. You need these U1 standard compute resources provided by Dyke HPC SDU. And in here, we wanted 100 crowns. And underneath that, we don't need any public IPs or software licenses, but we do need to include in this application section our Dyke project number. And you need to paste in your work zone project reference number. And I don't have one of those handy, so I'm just going to put in a string. That's all you need to enter once you come into this environment. So you just need to put in your project title and the resources that you've applied for, and then put in the 2 reference numbers that you need to be for us to be able to check which applications it was. And that's it. And we can submit that application. Once your project is approved, it will appear up here in the drop-down box. Initially, this will only be visible to you, the principal investigator. So you need to go in and find under this drop-down box the name of the project that you've just applied for. You can click on the name, and once it's been approved, of course, you can click on the name, and it will take you to the landing page for that project. So this is a blank project with no recent runs. I don't have any folders or anything saved in this project yet. So this is basically a blank slate for anyone who comes into a project. There are a few first steps that I would recommend once you start this. If you are going to be working with sensitive data on UCloud, one of the things you have to do is mark your data correctly, which means having a folder that reflects the type of data. When you open your files section inside the project, you'll notice that there's a folder called member files with your username. You can click into that, and at present, it's a blank slate. I don't have anything in here. I can create a folder. You can label this folder however you like. I'm just creating it like this so that I can show you the next step. On the right-hand side, you'll notice that there's a P with a ring around it. If I click on that P, you'll notice it brings up an opportunity to change the sensitivity of the folder. You have the option of making it private, which is just yours. That's the standard level of privacy for folders in projects. You can make it inherit, or else you can increase the level of sensitivity. These categories here are described in the process for working with sensitive data. So if you want to compare them, you can essentially work with level 0, 1, 2, and 3 in these categories. Let's say we were working with category 3 data. You need to provide a reason for making the project sensitive. And once you update that, it looks as though nothing's changed. But if I refresh this page, you'll see that that P changes to an S with a red ring around it. This is important, not because it changes the functionality of any of the files in the folder, but because it's an indicator to anyone else working with data in your project that that particular data in that folder needs to be treated with care. Everything that's in this folder will also inherit that sensitivity level, the highest sensitivity level of the folder. Ironically, though, you can degrade some of the sensitivity levels of the files in the folder. In this folder, I'm going to create some additional folders. I'm going to have the audio inputs that I'm going to use for transcription, and then I'm going to provide 4 examples of what you could choose when running the application. So I'll do 4 output folders. But we do need to include our audio files in this folder that we have here. And now that we've marked the folder as sensitive, we can upload some files from our local machine. And you can just select the files you want and drag and drop them into that window. And that will automatically upload them into the folder. If you do it inside a sensitively marked folder, or folder marked as sensitive, that will automatically inherit the sensitive data classification. And that's it for uploading the files. We've also now pre-prepped the places we want to be able to conduct our transcription. Today's transcription, well, first of all, let's find the application. The quickest way to do that is in the search bar at the top, just to look for Whisper, and then switch over to the applications, and it will be filtered to Whisper Transcription. Let's click on that model, and it will open up our Whisper Transcription application. And at this point, you need to choose how you want this application to run and what you want to run the application on. And I'm going to run this on those 3 audio files that I provided. And I'm going to do a couple of examples. And one of the things I want to show you in this demonstration is how to run jobs simultaneously. So that, this is a big benefit of UCloud. So it's something that I'd really like to demonstrate today. And that is that you don't have to run one big job with all of your files. You can start the Whisper Transcription app, go back to your landing page, and start it again while the other one is running. We're working on a massive underlying compute platform, so you can run as many parallel jobs as you like. I do recommend in all cases that you give a job name that makes sense for what you're doing. So that's just giving a title that makes sense. And then we're going to choose the machine type. And the fastest machine we recommend is the 16-core machine. And then you can either select an input file or directory. To use a file, you just click the Use button on the right. And then afterwards, you'll need to click inside this ringed box. And you need to then find the files that you're going to use. And those are inside my member files in my project. In this case, it defaulted to the right directory. Sometimes it doesn't. So just to be aware, check that you are in the right project at the top, and then check here whether you're in the correct drive. Once there are more members in your project, you might default to a different members project folder. So just be sure that you select the correct folder when you get to this point. But we're going to choose the folder where our data is, which is this Whisper Audio folder inside our sensitive folder. And it gets us to our list of files. And I'm just going to select the first one. And that, by clicking that blue Use button, includes the path to the file that is going to be used for the transcription. I also want to specify an output directory. And the reason for this is that I don't want it to go into the standard jobs directory in my user folder, because that isn't by default specified to be a sensitive data folder. So you can click the output directory option, select the folder that you want to use by going in, clicking on the name on the left to browse into it. And then when you find the folder that you're looking for, clicking the blue Use button to the right. And this is example 1. So we want to have our output go into example 1. But for now, we'll leave the language option blank and the archive password option blank. So the only things I've inputted are a job name, selected the machine type, the input file I want to use, and the output folder. Let's submit that one. What you'll see is the start of your job. UCloud, or at least the UCloud platform, needs to allocate 16 vCPU cores and 96 gigabytes of memory to your job. And once it has done that, the screen changes, and you can see that it is now running. And then the information at the bottom is what is being fed back to you as a user from the terminal window that the application is running in. It does take a little time for this to complete, and you can sit and wait in here, or else you can browse out to your home location. And if you want to browse back to that job that you currently have running, you can see we've got a news panel, a favorites panel, and a recent runs panel. That recent runs panel includes this job that I'm currently running, and you can see the stopwatch indicates that it is currently executing. If I click on that, it takes me back to that same screen that we were on. And I'm going to show you how you can invite other members to this project. We are in our project. We're looking at the project from this project view. You can go to your, again, drop-down box in the top left corner, manage projects, and we need to manage the project that we want to invite people to, which is this demo project for Whisper. And there's a members tab once you get into this view. If you click that members tab, you can see I'm currently the only member in this project. There are a few ways that you can add people to projects. The two that we recommend using are either creating a project link and sharing that with people. The risk of doing that is that if that link is accessed by somebody who isn't intended to access your project, it will remain active and they'll be able to join your project, and that could expose your data. The second way is to ask everyone to log into the UCloud platform for the first time and then get their usernames and share them with you, the principal investigator of this project. You can take that username, copy it, and paste it into that username addition section there, and just click add. And then you can add all the users to that project, to this project. I haven't pre-prepared anyone to come into this project in advance, so for now I'm just going to leave myself in here. Once somebody is added, you can then decide what kind of rights that person should have by clicking on this tab that you can see here. Unfortunately, because I'm the only person in this project, I have to be the principal investigator, and by default, I have all of the PI responsibilities for the project. This is where you add members, and this is also where you assign the rights of each of those members. I'm going to go back to my UCloud landing page. So let's look for our Whisper application again. Start it up, and then have our job number 2 in here. So the Whisper demo example 2. And in this case, we're going to do a multiple file transcription. We're not going to include any password on the file in this case either. But in this case, instead of using an input file, we're going to use an input directory. So if we click the directory option, input directory option, we again need to browse to the directory we want by clicking in this ringed box. And that needs to be, output directory needs to be inside this folder, example number 2. And this input directory is not our example 2, but our Whisper audio files, which is where all of the audio files are. So now that that is ready to run, I can submit it. And that'll start that job. Go back to my home screen, and I can see that my first job is completed. Before we go and inspect the output of that first job, I'm just going to start each of the other runs, just to make sure that they can get completed before we finish this conversation. So let's search for Whisper Transcription, and let's choose a 16-core machine again. We're going to use just a single input file this time instead of a directory. In our Whisper audio files, we take the second one because that will make sure that it comes out. And for an output directory, we still need to go and select the output directory we want, was example number 3. And in this case, let's choose a language, and let's make the language Danish instead of English, even though I know that that conversation was in English. And we're not going to include a password for this one. So we've got our input file, output directory, and we've selected Danish for example 3. And you can see example 3 hasn't started yet. Example 2 is still running. And now let's just start example 4. In example 4, we will add encryption and language selection. So we'll choose a 16-core machine. We'll choose an input file. Again, we can choose an input file or we can choose an input folder, but let's choose an input file just to make sure that it does complete as quickly as possible. And we're going to choose the output directory is going to be our output for number 4. And we're going to choose the language. In this case, let's choose English. And then archive password allows us to input a password for the zip file that is going to be included in our output. So I'm just going to include a password that is rather obvious because you can see the text here, and submit that job. Just to make sure we've got everything. We've got a name, we've got machine input file, an output directory. We've got a language, and we've included a password, and we can submit that. Now we can browse back to our landing page and go and inspect the results for our first job that we submitted. If you just click the job, it takes you to the output folder. This folder that it's showing at the bottom here is the standard job output in my members files area. Because I selected an alternative folder location, the output files from the job are not included here. The output files are in the specified location. If I go back to UCloud and I go to files and I go into member files, you see now that I have a jobs folder that I didn't create, that has been created automatically by UCloud. And I've been running the application Whisper Transcription, and there are a number of jobs that are either running or have run. My job one, example one, has all of the output parameter, or at least the input parameters for the job, but not the output data. The actual outputs of the Whisper transcription will go to the folders that you specify. So if we go to sensitive data, and in this case, example one, you'll see that we now have all of the output files for the initial transcription in this folder. Unfortunately, you can only download one file at a time, and previously you had to zip the file yourself, zip all these files yourself and download them together if you wanted to get them out. Now, however, you can just download all of these files collectively. If you just click that download link, you can then have a look at those files locally inside an unzipped archive on your local machine. And if you want to inspect the output of this, you can just open the TXT file that is available directly through the preview option on the UCloud platform. So you can see that this initial file outputted directly to English. It automatically outputted to English. Example 3 and 4, let's go to example 4, where we had encryption and language selection. If we go to our files, member files, sensitive data, example 4, you'll be able to inspect the text output in the Whisper application, or at least on the UCloud platform again. But if you want to download the file directly to your machine, the zip file, for example, you can download it, but you'll notice that when you try to open that zip file from example 4, you have to input the password that you provided. But once you provide the password, it will just unzip it as expected. So that allows you to protect the files that you download when you are done with your transcription. The last point I just want to make before we wrap up is that any sensitive data that you have on the UCloud platform needs to be deleted when you are finished with your project. It's in the procedure that we've outlined, but please be aware that you cannot just leave your sensitive data on the UCloud platform when you are done.
Just 2 quick points. One is that the output of each of the jobs ends up in a folder, and everything that job it exports into that folder, as well as anything else that is in that folder, is included in the output zip or archive file. So something that you need to be aware of. So if you have created this sensitive data folder and you were thinking of putting all of your outputs into the same folder, those zip archives can end up being quite messy because they could include other zip files, the other standard output files from the other jobs, etc. Another thing that you should be a little bit aware of is that if you have a look in this output folder, there's a log file from the transcription. That log file has the same name for each job, so that would be overwritten if you ran multiple jobs into the same folder. So you would lose that transcribe.log file. The information provided here, however, is very similar to what you can get access to if you browse into the jobs folder. And one of the options you could do instead of specifying an output folder is just allow the standard output to end up into the standard jobs folder, and then demarcate the Whisper transcription app outputs. So when you run jobs of different apps, you end up with a jobs folder where each app name is listed here. Here, the Whisper transcription app name is the bulk folder for all of the outputs of all of the jobs run under that application. And you can just mark that folder as sensitive, in which case, if I had not specified an output location, then the information, or at least the data for this job, which we ran without, so job 1 we ran without any specification, all of this data that's sitting in here is also now marked as sensitive data. So that's another alternative for being able to make sure that you have properly marked data without having to pre-make output folders for each job. It's just two different ways to go about the same thing. So this job 2 was a multi-file. You can see that we've got the standard out text file and the job parameters.json file, and that standard out.txt file contains pretty much all of the log information that you saw in the other file. So just those 2 points, you can either, if you want to export all of your files into specified folders, just remember to do an individual folder for each. Otherwise, you can come into your jobs, your standard jobs folder, or just make the Whisper Transcription app overall folder sensitive. There was one thing that I mentioned during the presentation that I would like to correct, and that is that when the job runs, so when UCloud runs a transcription for you, you end up with what looks like an audio file inside your job output. So this first one that we ran by default includes a file called whisper_audio3.m4a. And I said that in that demonstration that it copies the file over, but it in fact does not. All it does is it creates an empty file with the same name. So you can see down here in the size of the file, it is 0 bytes, while the actual audio file, of course, is much larger than that. So you don't have to worry about data being copied into your jobs folder. And when it does it with a group of files or in a folder, that folder that it creates inside these group transcription jobs is actually deleted. So you can see this was a single file and it ended up with that too. Whereas here in example 2, where we did multiple files, there's actually nothing in here. So it was just something that I was not quite aware of when I did the demonstration, and I've followed up with Pele, and it's not actually something to be worried about. So if you want to specify the output folder, this jobs folder won't contain anything sensitive. So that shouldn't be an issue for you. The last thing that I would like to demonstrate is just how to delete all of the files that you have sitting on UCloud and to archive the project once you're done. You can go into your files location where you have saved all of the outputs, and that sensitive data folder can simply be deleted. You can move it to trash, hold that down, and it will be moved to trash. You now have a trash folder because you've deleted something for the first time, and that trash folder, you can use the drop down and hold down the button on empty trash, and that will delete that data out of trash. So if you open the trash folder, it should have been deleted. Let's refresh that, and you can see there's nothing in there. Let's just go back to our landing page, and we can go back into files, member files, and of course we ran the one job that we didn't specify the output folder for. So perhaps we should go in and just make sure we have deleted that too. We can move that one to trash. That's done. Refresh that, go back to our member files and empty our trash one more time. And the next step is then to archive the project. So we go back to our landing page, to choose our workspace drop-down, choose manage projects. And this demo completion of form is the one that we created as a project. And we're going to use the drop-down here and archive. And you need to hold down your mouse to let it do that, and it will be archived. And you can refresh your screen and that project will now be gone. You also won't be able to select it once you move out of the project. So you can, in your projects, in your manage projects, activate the archive button on the right, and you can see that there are some projects that have been archived, and you still cannot browse into them, but you can see all of those projects. But just remember to delete your data in each of those projects before archiving. That's it for today. I hope that the demonstration has been useful for you. We'll include some notes and tips on the website, and there is also a broken down version of this demonstration where you can choose to watch whichever parts you like. Thank you very much, and all the very best with your research.